then putting it into a new house somewhere, new dishwashers and other things like that in a new house, then that's not really conservation. Now, that necessarily isn't up to the SNWA to decide that. That at this point is much more of a political topic. But I know that there will be more conversations about how to conserve more. But then again, the question becomes, how are we using that so-called conserved water?
John Hamby, I'm going to give you the last word. We only have about 30 seconds left. I'm just a lay person, but I am one of those 40 million people who rely on water from the Colorado and from the food that comes out of places like the Imperial Irrigation District. So how worried should I be?
I think there should be some level of confidence. Ironically, the silver lining here is that the worst situation is getting us driving people closer together to work toward actually solving these problems in the long term. So I actually have a lot of confidence that folks are going to get around the table, really hash these things out, and come up with a more sustainable future. So that's the silver lining. I think there's some hope for optimism.
John Brooks Hamby of the Imperial Irrigation District in California, Alex Hager, the Colorado River reporter for KUNC in Northern Colorado, and Kyle Roaring of the Great Basin Water Network. I want to thank you all for joining us. There's more just ahead. This is State of Nevada.
I'm Ari Shapiro. People who follow horoscopes say Virgos are empathetic listeners, strong communicators, great synthesizers. They can translate complicated information into easy-to-understand terms, so they say. Well, funny enough, those are the same traits that we at NPR try to bring to the stories we cover. So, happy birthday, Virgos, and happy 50th anniversary, NPR.
From Nevada Public Radio, I'm Joe Shaneman. It's State of Nevada. Millions of years ago, Nevada was home to a variety of dinosaurs, and I don't want to call them garden variety, but they weren't unique to the state. That has just changed. Nevada now has a dinosaur that so far no one else does. First discovered in 2008, fossilized bones of this creature have been pieced together over the last 13 years, and it's now verified and certified, and they're calling it Nevada-Dromius schmidti. Joshua Bond is one of the paleontologists who discovered the dinosaur. He is the director of research at the Nevada Science Center. Joshua, welcome to State of Nevada.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Tell us where you were, how you found this dinosaur.
This was just a random day. We were out doing prospecting in Valley of Fire State Park, which is one of the hot spots for dinosaurs in the state of Nevada. If you want to call any place in Nevada a hot spot for dinosaurs, there's not too many of them. But since about 2004, we've been digging dinosaurs out of Valley of Fire. So one trip, 2008, one of these random late summer hailstorms hits us. And so we just thought it was going to be one of those quick 15-minute rainstorms passes and then we keep going. But the hail started coming down. Started, when you get pelted in the back of the neck by hail and that little stinging feeling. So we're hunkered down, faces are on the ground, and one of the professors with us, Frankie Jackson from Montana State University, looked down, and there were some bones right there where we were hunkered down waiting out the storm.
What do you mean bones? Are you talking about like chicken bones or the kind of thing we would recognize, or these look like rocks and only a paleontologist would recognize?
I think they look like bones personally, but when I've shown them to other people, they're like, that's a rock. So they look like rocks with a very specific texture to them.
So what'd you do?
So what we do after the storm passes, we had a group of students with us, and so we started dusting off the surface. We started combing over the side of this hill that we were sitting on, and we ended up finding the remains of actually two dinosaurs.
Two dinosaurs? Are like hundreds of pieces of bone, or what?
Well, one of them, there was like a couple of dozen pieces of bone, and it was a really nice one because it was kind of a bluish colored bone, so it stood out really nice against the kind of blackish sandstones that we were sitting on. And then the bones of the dinosaur that we just named were sitting in this really buff sandstone, so it's kind of a tan-colored sandstone, and the bones are also tan, so it was a little bit harder to find, and the bones are also significantly smaller. So So it was actually really scouring that surface and just picking up the bits and pieces, which again, dozens of jigsaw puzzle pieces. And that's why it's taken us so long back in the lab to put this thing back together.
Well, yeah, I wonder how you do that. And maybe that's a really involved question, but if you have a bunch of bones that look like rocks, how do you know where they go?
It's literally a jigsaw puzzle. And it's, if you think of every single bone in an animal's body, you take a hammer, you smash it up, you throw away the picture from the jigsaw puzzle, and you have a bunch of different pieces you have to put together. So it's having volunteers, us when we get bored, sitting off, changing gears, going over there, bottle of super glue and a box of bones, and just going to town.
How long did it take before you knew you had something different or unique? I mean, at first, I'm sure you're just thinking, well, it's some dinosaur you've probably seen.
Yeah, so Nevada dromius is a little plant-eating dinosaur, and there's a lot of these from the Jurassic through the Cretaceous that have been found from New Mexico to Alaska, from Arkansas to Colorado. So we just thought it was just another run-of-the-mill little plant eater just doing his thing in Western North America, just happened to be in Nevada during this period of time. But when we started finally piecing together the head of the femur, so the top of the thigh bone, it started looking different than animals of the same age. So in Utah, there's a really good record of animals about 100 million years old, which our rocks are. And this thing was looking a lot more like an animal that's known from the very end of the Cretaceous, so about 80 million years ago. So it was 20 million years too early. And so that started giving us hints that there was something to miss here, and maybe something new.
From what you found, what do you know about Nevada dromius schmidti?
So Nevadadromius schmidti is a group of dinosaurs. The technical term, if there's any paleontologists tuning in, is a Thessalosauring. So that's the obnoxious terminology we use for job security and ecology. But it just means a little two-legged plant-eating dinosaur. It was probably on the menu for every other type of dinosaur. So the root dromius, as part of Nevadadromius, means runner. So it probably will spend a significant part of its life running away from being eaten.
How do you come up with schmidti?
So that is in honor of Professor James G. Schmidt of Montana State University, and before that UNLV. He's a legendary geologist who studied many rocks across the state of Nevada, and without his guidance, neither me or my co-author Dave Riccio would have even thought to look in Valley Fire State Park for dinosaurs.
Paleontologist Joshua Bondi is one of the people who made a momentous discovery in the Nevada desert 13 years ago. The fossils of a dinosaur that has so far only been found in Nevada. We're calling it Nevadadromius schmidti. It was found near Valley of Fire. This isn't big news to just Bondi, of course. There are quite a few young people interested in dinosaurs, and maybe no one as obsessed with dinosaurs as Caden Kidman. He's the 7-year-old son of KNPR senior producer Kristen Kidman. When he found out about this new dinosaur, he really wanted to be a paleontologist. Caden, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Caden, you have some questions of your own to ask Joshua Bondi. Go ahead, ask away.
What other dinosaurs lived in Nevada?
That's a great question. So over the years, again, we've been working in Valley of Fire State Park for about 20 years, and other parts of the state now. We have dinosaurs from Clark County, Nye County, Elko County, White Pine County, and Eureka County now as a result of this work. But getting back to your question, we now have sauropod dinosaurs, which are the ones with the long necks and long tails. We have ancestors of tyrannosaurs. We have primitive duck-billed dinosaurs. We have the armored dinosaurs like Ankylosaurus with the big club tail. Those things were stomping around here as well. And one that people always get a kick out of is that we also have raptors. So the ones that are about the same size as the Jurassic Park ones. Something related to dinosaur Deinonychus.
What did Nevada look like when the dinosaurs were alive?
That's a great question. So that's the type of research I typically do. And so what Nevada would have looked like, it would have looked a lot different than it does today. So California would have been a great big mountain range, kind of like the Andes are today in South America. And we would have sat kind of like where Brazil's at in South America today. So these big rivers like the Amazon coming off the mountains and making their way across Nevada and eventually depositing their sediment out in Utah. But living along those riverbanks here in Nevada were things like ferns. And so there's a thing called the fern prairies of the Cretaceous. So this dinosaur lived during the Cretaceous time period. And if you think this is before grasses evolved, so you can think of these landscapes like the prairies are today. except instead of grass, it would have been all ferns as far as the eye could see. And things like magnolia